Monsters, creatures, legends. You know them. You slay them. But do you ever get to play them? Sure, defeating a giant in single combat, solving a sphinx's riddle, or even outwitting a devil is a lot of fun. But what if you were the giant, sphinx, or devil? What if you could become the monster? Well, now you can. Continuing the tradition of Year of Monsters, Roll for Combat is proud to present the Year of Legends. Every month, you'll receive a new legendary creature that you can play as a character for either 5e or Pathfinder. Now you too can play as a fallen angel, a stony gargoyle, a brain-eating seraphage, an ocular evil eye, a towering giant, a teeming swarmblood, a moon-blessed were-creature, a tree-like arboreal, a miraculous golemborn, an accursed lamia, an ominous psychopomp, or a riddling sphinx. You can get all this for less than a cup of coffee every month. But don't delay. If you back the Year of Legends Kickstarter now, you'll receive Devils, a bonus 13th ancestry at the start of the new year. These infernal creatures from hell are the perfect complement to January's other ancestry, Angels. If you back the Kickstarter today, you'll receive both Devils and Angels to kick off 2024. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until 2025 for the Devils to appear. So, won't you give monster characters a chance? Back the Year of Legends today.
It's just us.
Yeah,
just
we
us
were going to have someone
chickens.
from Foundry, but they had to leave.
They had to travel, so it's just
Yeah.
us. Just Mark and I unfortunately...
Rogue and Sorcerer are like two of your most known classes, though, Stephen, right? You have the most opinions on those.
Well, here it is. There's the thing. Because everyone's like, why are you so quiet, Steve? I'm so quiet because I'm a forever GM. And I am really good at things like monsters or traps or adventure. Like everything GM-y. Like that stuff I can talk about all day. Strangely, the player stuff I'm not as versed on because I only know the classes that my players play. And my players play... I'll put it this way, I can't wait till Player Core 2 comes out because I'm going to have a lot of opinions on that one, but unfortunately Players Core 1, the only one I have any opinion on is the Rogue because I have a lot of Rogues in my game, so that one I could talk about. But the other ones I can't talk about. So if there was any class that we were going to end up doing together, thank God it was this one because this is the only one I can actually intelligently talk about. Not that I don't know the other classes, I just don't know them nearly as well as our guests do, which is why we keep bringing them on. So there you go.
I felt like we had some good back and forth with Derek yesterday on the Ranger. So people were sending me comments afterwards that were like, that was a really good because you guys disagreed, but you were willing to listen to each other's opinions and talk about it out on the air. So I thought that went well.
Well, the most interesting thing, and I 1,000% agree, is that the Ranger is sort of been retrofitted into the art. And that happens all the time. I want to tell you.
I mean, a few feats, yes.
Yeah, but you don't have a lot of space. Even a few feats.
No, it's true. it's like, true.
You know, but that happens more often than you think, where the art will dictate abilities or like how things are supposed to work. That's even happened to us, is that we will get art for a monster for the Battlezoo Bestiary, and then I'll be like, uh-oh, this guy has a different type of sword, or he is holding a shield and it doesn't have a shield in the stat block, so we got to add the shield. Or, you know, this happens quite frequently. So
yeah, I'm going to tell you when I get to the Rogue, a very hard to spot third change that is entirely lore based, significant lore cuts that were clearly based on copy fitting, adding extra things. So I'm going to talk about that when we get in, but I could see where they're like, ooh, we got a copy fit for the Rogue. And that happens in Ranger. Like, you're right that having one feat means you don't have space for another.
Oh, yeah, that definitely happens all the time. So, before we get into Rogue, Today will be different than the other days because I'm actually going to have to pay attention for once.
That's right.
I know. And I didn't go through it you went through it, you know all the changes. I went through it for like 30 minutes and I looked up what other people said changed. So you lead this, but I'll be able to follow. I mean, I just played
give me
last
your
night.
opinions on what you think about each change as we go through.
Yeah, and last night I did play again, and our guys successfully defeated the Warsworn, the Elite Warsworn.
Nice.
And actually, how they defeated it is that there was all these mooks in there, and then it attacked them with all the mooks, and the mooks attacked, and they had little clubs, and I couldn't believe it. They clubbed it to death. They kept critting. And even my friends were like, even the players were like, what's going on? The mooks are taking it down. I'm like, and no one, they didn't get hit once. In fact, and the best part was, there was a room full of mooks, and I roll a 1d12, and I'm like, let's go through it. Like 3 out of the 12 would hit a character. And the one that we crap on the most is Chris Beamer, who's like one of my best friends, but we love to crap on him. So an 11 will hit him. So I'm like, okay, it's randomly going to hit someone. I roll 1d12. 11. And he's like, of course it's going to hit me. And I'm like, yep. And then I hit him. And then sure enough, I hit him. Even had Mistform Elixir on, still hit him. And then I'm like, all right, let's do another roll for the second attack. Because it's slowed, so I only got 2 attacks. 1d12, 11, and he's like, come on, stop hitting me. And he's the only one who got hit that whole fight. And it was totally random. I was like, yeah, the mooks, they did great, and they took him down. And then you good job taking all the battle damage. And then he was like barely living, like dragging his legs behind him. Good thing he has like 220 hit points. And now they success. Now they're level 16. So we'll find out. Find out what level 16 does for characters. I presume a lot.
Yeah, you can get a lot. It depends on your class, because what 16th level feat you choose makes a big difference. It's also the first time that non-rogues, non-investigators can get a legendary skill feat, which means that you might wind up with Scared to Death and other really ridiculous things.
They already have Scared to Death.
Then they might. Was that a rogue or an investigator or something?
Neither.
Who got Scared to Death?
It was a sorcerer.
Oh, they took their general feat to get a skill feat because it's so powerful that it's worth it.
He's the face, so he has tons. Yeah. It worked. He actually told
Normally you want to get a general feat with that slot, but Scared to Death is so powerful that you would take a skill feat on it.
He used it and it worked. And he's like that was his single most satisfying death in his history of role playing.
There you go. Well, there you have it.
I looked at him and he died. he's like, I don't think it gets any better than that. I was like, wow, that is pretty powerful.
So do you want to give the intro spiel before we go into the rogue?
So the intro spiel. Here we are. I don't even know where we are. Where is the stuff? Here's the schedule. All right, there we go. Schedule. This is everything we've been doing. You guys know the deal. You see it all.
Yeah, we're close. We're close. Tomorrow, with Jessica Redicop. And then Thursday is Anto and the Wizard. And Friday is Rules Lawyer and the GM Core. And that will be the end of our breaking news 2-week marathon streams.
I know. It seems like a lot.
2 weeks and over an entire full day worth of streams.
That's a lot of streams. And on top of that, let's see. I don't even know what I did here. Is this the right one? There we go. Animated tokens. So I got more animated tokens. And here's the thing.
Wow.
I got so many animated tokens. I think the Angels alone is going to have something like, I can do the math. Hold on, I'll tell you.
Yeah, let me know, because the dog and the angel without the dog are going to add more.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. While
Steven does the math, if you have any questions about Rogue, and I will take a look at them, and if there's something I'm already going to address, I can just slot them in then. And if not, then we can maybe talk about them before or after. as usual, we will answer super chats first, then chats that are not super chats, and we'll try to get to what we can.
So I think there's going to be about 25 animated tokens just for the angels. Maybe 30, somewhere between 25 to 30 animated tokens. There's going to be more animated tokens than regular tokens, believe it or not. I'm not exactly sure.
Wait, how did that happen? How is that possible? Because there's 3 versions of the non-animated tokens.
Well, because he did things like the animator actually had the wings behind. You see the purple one on the top. You see how the wings of her cloak are behind the ring. He did one with the cloak behind the ring, and then one with the cloak in front of the ring. So he did different depths of fields.
So you get actions for where it's animated in front or behind.
Yeah, and then some have shadows and some don't have drop shadows. So he's basically just animating to death. This guy who was doing our animations. I was like, what started out as maybe I'll have some animations for some of the tokens. Then it was like, okay, we'll have at least the animations of the tokens with the rings. So that's 7. And I'm like, okay, now we'll do the ones with the tokens of them standing. And now it's to the point of we're just doing it all. We're doing it's insane. We're like, there's so many variations and versions, and he's just doing everything. So I opened it up to everyone. If you pledge $99 or more, you get the animated tokens. So if you already pledged, you can up your pledge. Everyone from now on, it's just updated on the site. So you'll get...
Oh, wait. So you're saying that it's not based on timing. It's not based on when you have decided that they get that $99 animated tokens for free, period, if they pledge at $99 or above.
Yes.
All right. So if you're watching this, it doesn't matter what time it is.
Doesn't matter. And you can just go to Year of Legend, yol.rollforcomment.com, or you can go to Kickstarter.rollforcomment.com, any of that. And this only goes till Thanksgiving, so after that, I'm not sure what we're going to do. And also, you're not going to get Devils a year early. So, Angels and Devils. Angels are almost done. That's why I have these Angels up here. So, and you can see them. What's this picture? Oh, that's a bad one. Let's not do that one. And... as again, just like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. If you have any questions, we'll get into it. But do check out the Kickstarter, because I don't know where else you're going to get anything like this. And these animated tokens, I'm kind of getting a little addicted to them.
Steven thinks these animated tokens are going to be the wave of the future for tokens. So you can be the first person in your friend group who's got all the animated tokens.
Well, they already are. The problem with animated tokens really had to do with technology. That's the thing. It goes backwards, because before you want to do animated tokens, you didn't have a way to really get them in there other than animated GIFs, right?
I see what you're saying. But now that you have like the WebP format.
Right. The WebP format, which is insane. It's ridiculous. I don't even know how they do it. It's like 1/50th the size of any other format, and it has like full color. And now there's an animated WebP. So the animated WebPs allow you to do this. So it sort of is, this happens a lot.
It's the time that the technology is ready for it.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's like the technology is caught up, and now we have the ability to put in animated WebM animated tokens, so I'm putting them in. But before
we have the technology.
Well, before that, like a year ago, you could do it, but they would have to be MP4s or MOVs if you want transparent backgrounds. There's a lot. It was just a lot. It was very intensive. But now you could actually do it. And I mean, like this picture, that's literally just Foundry. This picture. I just captured it. Like that's what it looks like in Foundry. And you can move them around stuff. I didn't actually do that, but yeah,
sounds good.
That's it. So
what are our incentives for today? If we get to like 100 likes, which seems unlikely, but you never know. We've done it on some of the previous times. Are we going to sing more Les Mis? Like, I don't know Les Mis as well as everybody else does. We're running out of the songs that I know as well how to do.
I don't know. I'll have to figure something out.
We'll do a different one. I can do others. I can do video game song or something like that.
We'll figure something out.
We'll figure something out if we get to 100 likes.
Yes.
And are you going to add an animated token? Someone yesterday suggested a Mark and Steven animated token based on the like cartoon Mark and Steven pictures. But I don't think that's a useful token for anybody. I feel like that's useless.
No one can use that except
nobody
us.
will care. You'll just have like a creepy Mark and Steven come onto your thing and then fight your PCs and it'll be like, why do we have this?
Yeah, that's a little weird. I don't know. Let's see how it goes. I don't even know where we're at right now because I've been so busy.
Oh, well, we are at a very interesting place. We are on the cusp of unlocking Storm Giants. If we had about, I don't know, 8 people pledge here, it would put us over 1,050 backers, and it would probably at least come close to unlocking Storm Giants, depending on if they pledge 99. 9 would be pretty solid.
1,050, I'll add something. We'll figure it out. I don't know what we'll add.
Esther suggests Good Riddance from Hades, which honestly, I could do Good Riddance. I've done it before.
What's Good Riddance from Hades? What's that?
It's like, farewell to all my earthly remains.
Oh, this is a song. I thought that was a...
Yeah, it's the song. Yeah.
Got
that
it.
one.
Well, I can't do that. That's way too high. So we'll figure something out. But anyhow, if you want some animated tokens, you want some Year Legends, and you want Year Monsters and all that jazz, go check it out. Anyhow... I guess get us 100 likes and we'll do something, and get us 1050 in purchases and we'll do something. So
there you go.
There we go. Who knows? We got 101 viewers. We could easily get 100 likes. I mean,
that's not easy. That's actually pretty challenging. But I think by the time we're through, we probably will, and I'm gonna have to sing Good Riddance or something like that. So let's move on to Rogue. And we'll see what happens. So take a look at your Rogue file as we, Stephen, as we move into this. There were also a lot of good questions that people asked about Rogue. So I am going to get into some of these that are connected to questions or to things I've already written. One person had a question that was not connected to a feat, which was, were people under the impression that Rogue needed buffs? I don't think so. I think that... that like Rogue was generally thought to be pretty strong, and but it was not thought to be like overwhelmingly powerful. So let's go into feats. And people are saying that I need to go to karaoke, or karaoke, or however you want to say it. All right. So in Rogue, in the class features, here are what changed. Number 1, it is trained in all martial weapons, not just a hodgepodge of a few roguey weapons. This is very good because there are certain weapons that came out later that were pretty roguey that were not given to the rogue just due to the fact they weren't written at the time that the bespoke weapon list was included. So that's an excellent change for Rogue to just have all martial weapons. Next, and this one is related to some of the questions that people had been asking before. Eldritch Trickster was flat out removed. They might be trying to cut out some of Rogue's more magical elements. They did not remove some of the really high-level feats that had magical abilities, but they did remove many of the other magical feats. And we'll go through that as I make it down deeper through Rogue. So here's another one. The Rackets have significantly reduced lore descriptions at the beginning. This was likely to copy fit the fact that additional text was added and the fact that their mastermind, which was in the advanced player's guide, was added compared to the beginning of the Rogue and the core rulebook. But they just have a little bit less information, and particularly the Ruffian does not have an example of a sketchy illegal thing that you could be, where they usually have at least one where it's you might not be working in the underworld. So next up, or actually, Stephen, do you have any response about Eldritch Trickster being removed or the martial weapon change? Because those are some pretty significant changes. They're two of the bigger ones that are in the class.
Well, the martial weapon, I mean, they needed that. I mean, every rogue I had played with, they they always struggled with weapons, or they always had problems with weapons. So that was needed. And I don't know anyone who played the Eldritch Rogue, so I don't know much about it other than I guess it wasn't that. If they took it out, I guess it wasn't that popular, or maybe the economy just didn't work well because the rogues already seem to have a lot to do once they get higher levels. They have so many feats, and they use up a lot of their points, especially with movement. At least the guys I play with, they move a lot. They're always doing like extra attacks. So I don't think they have any time extra. They have abilities to cast spells in their equipment. They never use it. So I think a spellcaster. I think rogues are a little slow, or not slow, but they use up a lot of abilities, and it's hard to combine spellcasting with rogues, I think. And so
sounds like Eldritch Trickster is like the worst possible choice for your players, because they already don't even use their tricky items.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's like I don't know. It's like you always need like two fasts or slow with a fast, but it seems like a slow with a slow will never work. So that makes sense. So I guess that's why they removed it.
So next up, the Ruffian Racket can use D6 martial and advanced weapons instead of just using D8 up to D8 simple weapons. So this was a much better move than allowing them to use D8 martial and advanced weapons, which essentially would have just crept up the kind of weapons that they could use. And it should generally work out well because the D6 martial and advanced weapons might have some ridiculously powerful traits. Now, there is a little bit of question because of the fact that the fatal trait could cause your critical hits to like not qualify anymore because they are suddenly above a D6 at that point. But I think some GMs are going to be nice and let your fatal weapon still be okay. But if you two-hand a weapon and it just permanently gets a higher damage die, I think obviously you shouldn't get the benefit for that. Otherwise, there's no point because you can just get a D12 on a bastard sword. So next up is the Scoundrel. So Scoundrel can now step, although it's not capitalized in a typo. It's a lowercase step, but it clearly means the action step as a free action after feinting with an agile or finesse melee weapon. This is a significant action economy booster for the Scoundrel, especially if they want to like kind of pivot around an enemy or like get out of a flank. It can sometimes, like once you feinted the enemy, you probably don't necessarily want to step away from them, which would have been normally the most powerful step that you could have since it stops the enemies from attacking you as much. But with one of the Scoundrel feats where you can lower their attack bonus with feint, you could feint to lower their attack bonus while stepping away and thus make it a real pain for them to attack you. So that's pretty cool. Unfortunately for Scoundrel, a feat that was already very powerful at making things flat-footed got buffed by a large amount at level 6, which hurts some of Scoundrel's use case, and we'll see that when we get to the feats. Next up, actually, did any of your players play Ruffians or Scoundrels, Stephen, or are they mostly thieves?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's what they are, but they're level 16, so they've done a lot of things to just get all the weapons they need. And the weird thing is they started out as strength rogues and then retrained to dex rogues because it didn't really work. I mean, basically it was like the problem with the weapon selection. So this weapon selection fixes a lot, actually. I think it's one of those, like, I don't know why didn't they do it earlier? You were there when they decided
Tradition.
Really?
Yeah, and now that they want to get rid of the OGL stuff, like Logan and I remember we're just like, can we just give Wizard Simple and Rogues Martial? And we got that to work on Investigator because there was no OGL tradition for it, right? It was just like, we made up the Investigator, or Paizo did, I guess, slightly before Logan and I were like making classes, right? But that was made up. It could be whatever it wanted to be. So, yeah. That's why it was easy. And that the metal armor stuff on Druid, like, good riddance. Not just the song from Hades, actual good riddance. So, Thief, which was already considered the strongest racket by many people, can now gain dex to damage on finesse, melee, unarmed attacks. This is a large shift because it means that monk or martial artist are now by far the most powerful option for thief, which by boosting thief has now made all of the other rackets a little bit harder to use or justify, especially we'll see with one of the level 6 feats going up. This is because both of those two archetypes can give you a D8 agile finesse unarmed attack in a stance. And not only that, monk, if you're willing to stomach getting a little bit of strength to qualify for monk, can get you flurry of blows, a one action that's going to give you 2 attacks, both of which apply sneak attack, which previously you could not do. And that was part of the unarmed attacks not being allowed. So monk thief, if you can stomach the 14 strength, or martial artist thief, if you can't stomach the 14 strength, is going to be strong. Wolf stance in particular has backstabber, which if you're going to want them to be flat-footed anyway, so it's pure damage. Stumbling stance is also very good for rogues. They're both pretty much better than anything else in most situations. Next after that is going to be the name changes for some of these features. Now, here's a really weird one. We've never seen this up until this point alphabetically. Evasion was changed to evasive reflexes as its name, and that's fine. We had natural reflexes for the ranger, right? All of them are like that. So we would expect improved evasion to be like improved evasive reflexes or greater evasive reflexes, right? It was changed to greater rogue reflexes, which is not the same name as the lesser version. And this is the only place so far, I haven't done the deep dive on the 2 other classes yet. I'm doing them as we go. The only place so far where it just isn't parallel to each other, which I found to be interesting. I think it's probably a mistake.
I was about to say that's a mistake.
I think it's probably a mistake, but if it wasn't a mistake and it was done intentionally, I'm not sure what that intention is, but it could be interesting to figure out why. Then next, like in Ranger, Vigilant and Incredible Senses, despite not being an OGL name, were changed to Perception Mastery and Perception Legend. That's kind of breaking the schema where I guess you could say Perception is out of the schema. Saving throws are the ones in the schema, where Expert ones were given a generic name and Master and Legendary ones, like here with Evasive Reflexes, were given a unique name. So here's one that also is probably a mistake. And this one, unlike being a mistake in just the name that doesn't do anything, has a huge impact on the rogue class. So Great Fortitude was changed to be named Rogue Resilience. It's the one that puts you up from trained to expert. However, in what is almost certainly a mistake, even though it makes you expert and not master, it gives the benefits of master saving throw effects where you count a success that you rolled as a critical success on fortitude. If this is not a mistake and is instead a very unusual decision that was made on purpose, Rogue would be the only class in the game to be guaranteed to gain this benefit in all 3 saves. And it would oddly gain the benefit in its worst save before its middle save, because it doesn't get the middle save, will save, until like a significantly higher level than this. So it seems to me like maybe when all the things got renamed, somebody thought it was a master fortitude feature and not an expert feature. And there's some people in chat who are like, no, it can't be a mistake. Rogue is the best. And I don't know. I think that it's probably a mistake, but we'll see. That's a guess. I have literally no insight other than the fact that it just doesn't really like fit with what any other class does in that regard, and would just make them the like really, really good at everything, which no other class has. So Slippery Mind, which was an OGL name, was changed to be named Agile Mind. Then let's move on to the feats. So there weren't that many changes to feats, even though what changes were made were generally very significant. And they also generally were either major to a certain build style, or sometimes it was rich get richer, where already powerful feats got even more powerful, as we'll see. So first of all, minor magic was removed. all of the most of the magic feats were removed, even if they were not an Eldritch Trickster requirement. Like some of the kind of mystical stuff at high levels weren't, but a lot of them were removed. I don't know, Steven, you said none of your people took minor magic though, right?
No, they did, and then they never used it.
Oh, they took it and didn't use it. Okay. Battle assessment was removed. Did any of your rogue players have battle assessment? That's the one where you use perception to find out more about your enemy by like watching their movements in the fight.
Yeah, the thing is we have an investigator, so they do what's the share.
Oh yeah, they do the thing where they investigate and then they automatically get a recall knowledge check and then they share the information. Yes, so they wouldn't need battle assessment on the rogue if you've got an investigator with that feat.
Right. They actually were talking about it, but what happens is the investigator basically gives you the same thing, so they don't need it.
Someone in chat mentioned minor magic with warp step on rogue is really good. It is. There's a lot of good choices for minor magic, but now it's been removed. So here's one that is going to be particularly head scratching later when we get to a higher level feat that is weaker. But head stomp, which was a feat where you stomp on somebody who is prone.
I saw that.
Now automatically stupefies 1 if you hit or 2 on a crit. Now you do have to use an unarmed attack, but as we mentioned for thieves, that's already going to be like your best bet. And we're going to get to another stupefy ability that's at much higher level that gives a saving throw. And we'll talk about that at that point.
Yeah, but it doesn't do damage, right? It only stupefies them.
So it makes them flat-footed. It does what it already did. So I'll read off the full benefit, but it stupefies them in addition to all of its previous things that it did. So it is a strike. It does full damage. They are stupefied and off guard, aka the old flat-footed, for 1 turn. So it does do damage. It does all the damage, and it does 2 conditions, and it does all your debilitations if you have debilitations. So it's actually quite a lot of conditions. You're kind of like a Marlboro from Final Fantasy at that point.
Why does it not have the attack keyword?
Because you do a strike. So you don't put the attack trait into the feat itself if the subordinate action has the attack trait, like the strike. That's a very good question. It's a common one. So next up, Magical Trickster was also removed, the one where you sneak attack with spells. So did any of your players have Head Stomp or Magical Trickster, Steven?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
So here's another one. Nice quality of life. Poison weapon now lasts indefinitely using the normal rules for injury poison. Previously, it lasted for a shorter period of time, which usually doesn't matter. But in this case, if it's near the end of the fight and you miss and it's still on your weapon, it'll stick around. Did any of your people go poison route? Because if they didn't like poison weapon, maybe they'll like the new archetype that we put in the Battle Zoo Indigo Isles, where you're just got a living poison inside of you. It's very poison focused.
No, but they were also playing cops, and they were trying to do non-lethal damage. So
I feel like cops don't usually poison you unless it's like gas that is meant to incapacitate people or something like that.
The investigators have fooled around. Like we've fooled around with poison. Now remember, I have played probably, with no exaggeration, easily 500 sessions of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So I'm using all my knowledge in all the games. And, we've tried poisons out. And they're just kind of slow. They're a little cumbersome. And they're slow not only in game, but they're slow in life. Because you got to sit there, and then you look up the rules, and then you got to do the saves. Like, they're just slow. They're a little cumbersome. And, I think it's one of those... It works better in a video game, or maybe works better with an add-on in Foundry or something. It's I guess if you use it a lot, but unless there's a way to apply it, unless you have something that would automatically apply the poison every round, it's slow and cumbersome. Now poisons on monsters, that's great. I love my poisons on monsters.
It's so scary. It's scary, Steven. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but the point is like, I don't know how great poisons really... I don't know, we always try them out and we're always underwhelmed. Poisons are like the grenades of Starfinder.
If you use them right, poisons could do a lot. Even in PF1, I had an alchemist who just had so many of them that eventually the enemy was going to fail, and we put on like permanent con loss. And then that's sort of... It was a circle of death, and you spiral down the drain, because once you lose con, your fortitude goes down, and then you might fail the next time against the poison. It was one that required 2 successful saves in a row to get rid of it. So that was always fun. All right, so next up, a new feat, Scoundrel's Disguise, was added. It's a very cool idea for a feat. Basically, the idea is that you sneaked in there in a disguise, and people who thought that you were the person you were disguised as become off guard when against your next attack when you remove the disguise. So there's a few things about this one that I think are a little bit not as good as it could have been. One, it has basically a requirement, but it's in the running text, and it should probably be in the requirements section at the beginning so that you can see what the requirement is very clearly, because right now the way that it's worded, there's a little bit of vagueness on what it means. Does it mean if an ooze is there and you're in the disguise, and it kind of couldn't tell that Steven was disguised as Derek? Does it matter if they care about the disguise or actually try to penetrate it? And the requirements might say that. Second is that if you're using a disguised and roll deception for initiative because of the disguise, your surprise strike ability already lets you attack and make the opponent off guard. Now, you could use this on round 2 and be like, first of all, so let's say Steven was a rogue and he wanted to attack the Knights of Last Call, and he was dressed up as Derek, and they all thought he was Derek. And so he comes in, and maybe what you could do with this feat is round 1, he wins initiative with deception. He starts stabbing them, and they're all off guard because of his surprise strike rogue class feature. Then on round, they're all like, Derek, why are you stabbing us? You've stabbed us. And then on round 2, he says, surprise, and he takes off the mask. I'm not Derek. It's me, Steven Glicker. And then he stabs them again, and they're off guard again, I suppose. It's not a lot of situations, so it does get to be a little niche. And because of the fact that you already have that from surprise strike, maybe it could have gained an additional benefit. I love the idea for it, though. That's the kind of thing I always want to do in a fight, is something cool like that. I don't know. What do you think about the new feat Scoundrel's Disguise, Steven?
I'm looking it up. What level is this?
It is at, I think it's still level 4. Yes.
Scoundrel Surprise?
Scoundrel Surprise.
Scoundrel Surprise.
Yes.
It is okay. I mean, again, it's very flavorful, and I feel surprise is weird in Pathfinder 2nd edition, because there is no surprise round anymore now because of that, so surprise is always odd. So this is one of those, I mean, I know we're supposed to be talking about the rules, but I find it that because of larger rules, it ends up being okay, I dropped the disguise, haha, now what? And yes, they're off guard. Any creatures that previously
but the thing is, they, like I said before, they'd already be off guard because you were rolling deception for initiative if you won. Right. So, and if you didn't win, then maybe they noticed, if you rolled low on your deception, which may have been your initiative and your impersonate check, then they may have noticed that you weren't the person you said you were. So you almost have to do what I said and remove the disguise on the second round.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I feel like that
this is the problem is the name, because it's okay, it sounds like a surprise, so it's something you would use during the surprise round or initiative, but it's not. Does that make sense? To me, it's a confusing name for a confusing feat, which I think is kind of useless because
I like it, but for the theme, but maybe the benefit could have been
great.
The benefit could have been something other than off guard, because surprise strike already gives you off guard. Maybe it could have been bonus damage when you're revealing yourself, or on your attacks or something like that.
It doesn't do it. In the old game, this would be oh, you get to attack first in the surprise round or something like that, but there's no surprise round.
Or it would be one of those vigilante feats where you remove your mask and then they're frightened or stunned or something. It was stunning entrance. Remember those back in the PF1?
What's the feat? I forgot the name of it, where you intimidate when the initiative is rolled, and then you immediately...
battle cry, where you yell out.
So we have
that could also be something that it did, where it was they get demoralized because of the fact that they get because of the fact the person they thought was Derek when was actually Steven or something like that.
Right.
And people in chat said stun would be broken. That's correct. You're right. Stun would be broken for a 4th level feat. I gave stun as an example for something that the old vigilante used to do at a much higher level. But it's just off guard is very thematic. It's just that rogue already has a way to do that.
Well, not only that, like the way our guys play is they're always flanking each other. So
yeah, there's a million ways.
It just doesn't do enough. It's sort of like.
I think it should do a little more because I really do want to encourage scoundrels to do this, to do the thing that's in there. It's great to encourage that, but it maybe needs a little more payoff. I agree. Yeah. So next up is twin distraction. So that's a very important one to look at because we were just looking at head stomp. And twin distraction is a feat where you have to have 2 weapons. Yes. What level is twin distraction? Did we just go up a bunch of feats because nothing changed for a while?
Level 4.
Oh, it's still level 4. Okay, so yeah, it is almost the same level as head stomp. It in fact is at the same level. They're exactly the same level. It has a prerequisite of twin feint.
Twin feint, which by the way,
then you have to use twin feint.
My guys use all the time.
And you have to hit with both attacks on twin feint, which means you need to hit with your first attack. Yes. And then your second attack, while they're both kind of small weapons because you're 2-weapon fighting. And if you were just using an unarmed attack with Monk or whatever, now that you can do that, it's going to do more damage. Mm-hmm. And someone else can trip them. So, like, obviously, if you trip them and then head stomp them, you do need to hit with both attacks, right? You need to hit with the trip and then with the multiple attack benefit to head stomp them. Head stomp works if someone else tripped them or you trip them, whereas the twin destruction only works if you hit with both attacks. And they get a will save against the Stupefy. And it's Stupefied 1, and it isn't 2 on a critical failure. So I feel like that Head Stomp didn't used to be this way because it gave fewer benefits. But now that it was buffed to just be much better than Twin Distraction. Like, unless you can't field a decent unarmed attack for it. And it's so similar and at the same level, too.
I don't know. Our guy, John, has Twin Feint, and he uses it every single round. That's like his go-to.
Don't get me wrong. It's a good feat if the enemy is not off guard / flat-footed. But as you said, they're often flanked already and you don't need Twin Feint.
He never, ever seems to hit with both attacks. Like he's always complaining about that. So
it's hard to hit with both attacks. That's part of why I'm saying Twin Distraction, which was actually it's a legitimate feat. But the new Head Stomp is just way stronger now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the problem with Rogue has always had this problem, is like the secret of Rogue is that they would add debilitating, debilitating abilities to creatures, and you can't at low levels get too crazy. So what do? And then you have to make it like, well, if you hit, but you have to hit with 2 weapons, and then they have to make a save, and then, only then they're stupefied.
Yeah, I feel like either the save should have been removed on Twin Distraction, or Head Stomp should have been given a save. Yeah, maybe both, because with Twin Distraction you have to hit both times. With Head Stomp, you hit like just once and it's in. Yes, you do have to trip them at some point, whereas Twin Distraction you can do pure damage, but tripping is pretty good anyway.
I think rogues are great, but the problem is there's always been an issue. It's like they're beginning. They start off. I don't know if they start off weak, but they start off strong, and then all their feats kind of stink.
What? Rogues have incredibly strong feats overall.
The problem is in the beginning.
Their beginning feats are pretty good, and the middle feats are really good.
I was saying the middle and end. He is automatically hitting. He's automatically they get crazy. I mean, him always being able to hit no matter what, that's like, I can't tell you how key that is, especially because he's got
someone in chat pointed out that mobility might be the best level 2 feat in the game according to E. coli, but not spelled the same way as the bacteria.
There's a lot of
it is a very good feat.
They start off really well, and they have
all their feats are good at almost every level.
Yeah.
I mean, not literally every feat, but there's usually at least a few feats that are very strong, and they just made some of the strongest feats stronger. We're about to get to one of those.
Yeah,
that's not the next one. It's the one after that.
Rogues are just weird. they're interesting class. They're one of the most interesting classes.
I like them because, you know what? People always said Rogue was the weakest class of Pathfinder 1. And so I'm glad that we made Rogue into one that people love and that feel is a good class in Pathfinder 2.
I know,
and
but the
Remaster didn't change them that much.
That the feats are always taken, and they're right. The same feats are always taken. And in fact, our guys tried out some of these other feats, and they just never used them, and then they retrained. And I let them retrain because they were just like, yeah, I don't really like these.
Well, hopefully the other feats were buffed and not the ones that they think are the ones that have to be taken. But unfortunately, some of the ones that were buffed they got major buffs were actually the must-haves already.
Yeah.
So let's get to that. The next one is not that. Analyze weakness. The wording on the advancement changed slightly to make it less future-proofed against a rogue that doesn't scale sneak attack at the same pace. It used to be like, if you're this level and you have this much sneak attack, then it gives you more. Now it just checks to make sure you have 2d6 sneak attack, which, to be fair, you can't get with multi-class, but maybe somebody else can get. And then it doesn't check to make sure that your sneak attack keeps going up. It removed the future proofing. Otherwise, it's exactly the same right now, but it's just slightly less future proof. All right, here's the big one in feats. Gang Up, already an incredibly powerful choice for a rogue, enough to be considered by many people a must take. I think there were other options you could take because, like you said, Steven, sometimes just everybody has things off guard anyway, / flat-footed. Mm-hmm. Gang Up is the one where just as long as you and an ally are next to the enemy, they are flanked, even if you're not across from each other. They're flanked by you, but not your other allies. It has been majorly buffed, so now that they're also flanked by everyone, the moment you stand next to an enemy, any of your other allies who are next to that enemy are flanking, regardless of where they are. So this is huge enough. It's huge enough that it is also a huge kick to the Scoundrel, who one of their claims to fame was being able to make enemies flat-footed to all your allies. And has gone from where a lot of people called the old Gang Up a must-have, and I was like, no, there's other good feats. I think you don't need to take it. It's very strong, but you might not need it. You could take something else too. Even I am getting to the point where I think it might be a must-have now. Now, did your players have Gang Up, Steven? Do you remember?
Nope, they do not.
The rogues that I've played with a lot of them, most of them have taken it, except for the one I think is like the most optimized, who found other ways to get that, and then took a bunch of weird other stuff to do massive damage.
Strike. That's why.
Skirmish Strike is very good because you can skirmish out of the fight and be hard to hit. It's very strong too.
Yep.
I think that there's a lot of good options in that you didn't need to take Gang Up before. Yeah. Right, so next change. A really cool feat was added. Slide Disarm was added at level, I want to say, this is still level 6. Now, unfortunately, Skirmish Strike and the new, more powerful Gang Up still exist at level 6. But Slide Disarm lets you use Thievery instead of Athletics to disarm. And if you succeed, they're off guard against your next attack. So it's basically like a feint. In addition to taking the new improved disarm penalty. So that's really cool. Using Thievery, that'll use your dexterity. It's very on point for the rogue, and I think this is a great new feat that was added to the game. Do you think any of your players would like Slide Disarm?
No, because they're also at a high enough level where the problem with Disarm is that I'd say most of the times, like there are a lot of times they're fighting creatures, and they're all about utility and trying to. They're not all, but the guys playing my rogues like to have what they're doing work frequently, if that makes sense. When it comes to combat, like they'll take something like Underwater Marauder, which never comes up, which is weird because why would you take that? But,
because they want to get rid of the one case where they wouldn't have been able to do anything. Is that right?
Or they just, I don't know, they're just having stuff to do. But the point is that this is a feat that it either can be used or never used. You know,
So
it's
there's
like,
a weird thing about disarm, which is that it
Right.
doesn't require the enemy to have an item. And so
oh really?
you could theoretically, it doesn't
Well, disarm
say
sucked too, by the way. So.
Well, I mean, it got buffed.
Right.
Though.
Well, they haven't looked at the new one, so.
Right. Yeah.
Right,
Of course.
right,
And this
right.
feat didn't even exist, so I know they didn't
Right.
take it before. I'm just
Right.
saying with the new disarm and this feat. So it doesn't say they have to have an item. Now, normally it would be foolish to disarm a creature with no item because it wouldn't do anything. But with this, a successful
I
disarm
see.
makes them off guard. So it would be a way to
It
use your
doesn't matter. You
thievery,
see-
which is dexterity based,
Yeah.
to make
but-
the enemy off guard instead of using charisma on deception to use a feint. It's
Yeah, but
basically
twin-
a way to use thievery to feint, which
Yeah, but-
also can
Yeah.
potentially do some things.
Twin Feint already does it. They already have other abilities that will do
Only
that.
on the second attack.
I
But
know,
that's
but
fair.
that's
fair.
But it always
Also,
works.
the new gang up is just so good that I understand that people are probably going to take it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, is that people are really, really good at figuring out what is the best. You know, it's like you can have 3 feats that are all almost identical, but if one is 0.1% better than the other one, you know, people will figure
Actually, that's the easiest way to figure out which one's better if they're almost identical.
out. Well, I know.
It would have been
you know,
harder
right.
to tell between those 2 level 4 rogue feats which one was better if they didn't both do stupefied with slightly different
No,
conditions, for example.
You're right, but I'm talking about is that there's so many things that put you off guard.
Yeah.
Is that it's like, okay, that does off guard. Like I had 10 feats that put you off guard. I don't need 10 feats that put someone off guard. And
I remember somebody when I was talking online about like rogues and certain other things who was like, Mark, you're assuming that the enemy is off guard. And I said, I've run a ton of games with my rogue, and let me tell you, the number of times that the enemy was off guard from 4 different effects was higher than the number of times that the enemy was not off guard at all.
correct.
By a significant amount. And they were like, how many of those were flanking? I said, well, 1 of the 4 effects was flanking. You can't be flanking more than once. But usually it would be like they were flanking and they were off guard because somebody got a critical that made the target off guard. And they're like, my party had a lot of weird things. There was an alchemist who hit them with lightning bombs that made them off guard. It was flat footed at the time. But
Yeah.
3 was the average, somewhere between 2 to 3 times of being off guard. It was very rare for a creature to be have fewer than 1 instance of it on them, and obviously it doesn't help you to have more than 1. So no, I'm with you on that. That's actually the reason why I thought old gang up wasn't as required. But the fact that you can give it to everyone who's in melee with you is just so much of a gain that it makes it so that can become your way to get it, especially if the enemy's standing in a corner or something, so you can't flank. And you don't have to do the other ways of getting off guard.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to say. It's like, the thing with off guard is you can get someone off guard by just flanking them. And so it's like, there's a lot of ways. It really comes down to this. Making someone off guard is very easy, and anyone can do it. Especially now that everyone's considered armed all the time. It's not that difficult. So when you look at this, it's like, I'm going to have to unfortunately take the item that's the feat that's the best one. But things like light step, which our guys do take, they love
I actually
that.
really like light step. I just don't think that it's as good as the other things at that feat level, especially now that gang up is stronger.
I agree, but ignoring difficult terrain, especially at lower levels, is unbelievable. You know, that
Yes,
like,
it is good.
it's really good. And then
It depends on if you want to minimize your vulnerabilities, for the same reason they took Underwater Marauder and be like, if I'm in the worst possible terrain, like it's a mini-max algorithm, right?
Strike, that's why, because they want to make sure they can step.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So when you're
light
playing
step with skirmish strike, because you can't. What's it? Step through difficult terrain, but then you have light step, and then you can.
So in game theory, like if you're trying to make, say, an AI to play chess, you can't just assume your opponent's going to make bad moves or you will lose. You want to always figure out what your best case scenario is if they brought the worst possible thing for you. And if you're trying to do that, a mini-max, your best case and the worst case, then taking things that protect you from being underwater or other bad scenarios makes sense because you're maximizing your low end, whereas some people want to maximize their high end and then they're fragile to being sent into an unexpected circumstance. And I think it is smart to consider those unexpected circumstances. It sounds like your group does too.
Yeah. My point is that, again, the rogue sort of, there's so many things that are about making people off guard, and it's just like there's almost too much emphasis. Now things don't stack as much, you know.
It loves off guard.
I
It's
know
so
it loves off
important.
guard, but there's other feats that are better at it, as we keep saying. So anyhow.
Yeah, so we'll move on. Delay trap. There's a few small changes. So delay trap was slightly reworded. Now your GM has the option to make the trap go off at the start of your next turn on a normal but not critical success. Previously, the GM had to choose to have it not triggered at all, or which going off at the end of your next turn, whichever is worse for you. Now they can also choose to make it go off at the start of your next turn, whichever is worse for you of all three of those options. Previously, you on a critical success could have chosen all three, whichever was better for you, whereas the GM couldn't choose the third one, and now both you and the GM can choose from the same menu. Essentially, it's more parallel than before. That makes it slightly weaker because the GM has more options for a bad thing on a success, but it's still, if you take this, you'll probably have enough time to move out before the trap hits you. Inspired stratagem was slightly reformatted. Instead of the whole thing being a reaction with a requirement clause, the preparation part of inspired stratagem, where you prepare a stratagem with your allies, is now the main feat, and there's a reaction at the end that does the reactive part. You can now also use it with 5 allies instead of up to 4 allies, so it has one more ally for you. Next up, the loner spell feat was removed entirely. So now that we've made it to there, Steven, did any of your guys or folks take delay trap, inspired stratagem, or loner spell before?
Nope.
All right. Well, oh yeah, loner spell I think even requires Eldritch Trickster, so they obviously didn't because they weren't an Eldritch Trickster.
Nope.
All right.
Take any of those.
So here's an interesting one that is
They take blind
just
fight, because blind fight.
yeah, because they're mini maxing again.
Well,
that helps you
blind
so
fight-
much when
no.
you're in a bad situation.
Dude, blind fight since 3rd edition is God. It's like it doesn't always come in handy, but when it does, you're thanking God you took it. Because
I understand your players even more by going through this deep dive and looking
Yeah.
at what they did than I have before. They
Yeah.
definitely are mini maxing, which, by the way, that's the way to win in things like chess. You don't want to assume you're always in your best case. It's better than a white room. Best case, I do 500. But if you change the variables by anything, I can't do anything anymore. Like,
Correct.
that's so fragile,
yes,
right?
right, right. They're not even. They're spreading the risk. There's min-max.
They're not doing that. They're covering themselves.
Right, they're covering themselves. Like they're able to have, because like blind fight doesn't always come in handy, but when it does, boy, does it come in handy.
Yeah,
So-
our rogue in the game I was running, who was very optimal, did have it, and it helped her out a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So
Nimble roll they also have taken, by the way.
yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
So we've got
the one.
swipe souvenir, which I'm gonna say is like the disguise feat, is another one where it was like whoever was coming up with these new feats for rogue, they're all so flavorful and they're exactly what I want a rogue to do. But in some cases, they may have needed to have more additional benefits to be competitive enough to take at the level. So swipe souvenir is a new feat. 2 actions: when you're grabbed or restrained by a creature, you wriggle free from the enemy's grasp and take something of theirs with you. You attempt to escape from being grabbed or restrained by a creature. If you succeed, you can also attempt to steal from them even in combat. Now, this is a level 8 feat. There already existed a unchanged feat called Mug at level 4 that is very similar, but for attacking instead of escaping, where it's just like you attack the enemy, and just like Final Fantasy Bug, you strike them, and if you hit and deal sneak attack damage, you can attempt to steal from them even if they're in combat. Both of these 2 feats, Bug and the new feat, are cool. They seem like something a rogue would do. It's like, aha, while you were grabbing me in close, I used that opportunity to pick your pocket. And they save you actions. So they're feats that do something useful. The problem with Swipe Souvenir is it's not only higher level than Mug, but they have to grab or restrain you themselves. So if they don't do that, you can't even use it. And so I feel like at that level, it might have made sense to allow you to tempt the steal even if you failed to escape from their grab, because at least that would be some advantage over Mug, which has to hit, which is lower level and lets you do it proactively on your strike. Because right now, if they're not planning to grab or restrain you, then you can't even use Swipe Souvenir in the first place. I don't know. What do you think about that, Stephen? Maybe it could have been a lower level feat as well. There's a lot of options. It's very flavorful, but like what it does, I think doesn't stack up to Mug.
No, and also, I mean, our guys always use freedom of movements. They actually have a lot of abilities, or they have a lot of items that will let them out of being grabbed or having escapes. So they're pretty good about that. There's a lot of magic items that take care of this for you, so they'll usually do that. I mean, I'm looking to see what they've used. They've used opportune backstab. They've done sidestep before. I mean, I let my guys retrain a fair amount. So nimble roll, I talked about blind fight. So Swipe Souvenir is okay, but again, it's one of those things. Okay.
It's interesting, but I don't know if it does enough for a level 8 feat.
Wait, it's not as interesting because...
It's not?
I'm going to tell you why. Most creatures that grab you, in my opinion, are monsters that don't have gear.
Oh, that's a really good point. A lot of them grab you with the special grab ability. It's like a purple worm, and they don't even have anything to steal.
So, like, this is kind of a wasted feat, because it's like...
That's an even better point.
Yeah.
I thought that the problem was that you don't get grabbed that often.
Oh, no, we get grabbed all the time, but they're always like monsters. They're never...
Even if you do, they might not have anything to steal.
There's nothing to steal. Trust me, they get grabbed and then swallowed whole all the time in my games. That happens a lot. They may as well have their mail delivered to them inside the monster's stomach because they get grabbed and thrown in there so frequently. The problem is there's nothing to steal. And in fact, I don't think in 500 plus games I've ever had an NPC character grab. It's incredibly rare. It's only large...
I think Linda wrote an NPC in Fires of the Haunted City that does.
So rare. But
the fact that I have to think about that, and there's like maybe one that tries to capture you in a net or something, in another one, there's very, very small number.
It's a very cool idea, but in practice, this is one of those you'll take, you'll never use it, or if you do use it, it'll just to escape, and then you'll never get anything, and then you'll train out of it.
You've convinced me. Before, I thought it was a very cool idea, but it wasn't usable enough in enough circumstances. Now I think it's a very cool idea, but it's far too niche, because I was not thinking about the fact they had to both grab you and have something to steal. I'm always
very
good
the monsters. Point. See, the GM point. Hey, what do you know? I'm actually coming in handy now.
No, you got it. We were on the same track, but you had a more extreme opinion, and I think your more extreme opinion was right in this case. So that probably could have used some upgrades or something, like maybe for the one.
If they don't have an item, then maybe they're clumsy one.
Yeah, or you do some kind of condition to them because you swipe like a piece off of them and they get angry.
Yeah, I would say they're clumsy one, or you have a chance to trip them or something. Like something that's like worth it, because it's like, oh, not only did I escape...
Maybe they're sickened because you like removed part of their body.
Right, If it's like, not only did I escape, but then I did something to you.
You were in their stomach possibly when you escaped as well. So
I think that's better in general, because... it works on anything. You see, that's the problem with some of these, and I'm not going to criticize the Paizo development team, but these are so specific that I feel like I'm more of I mean, you and I were literally working on intelligent weapons, and I look at edge cases. That's like all I do.
Yeah, you gotta look at edge cases. Intelligent weapons has so many edge cases. It was busting my brain on the edge cases.
But the thing is that these are all edge case feats, and I think that's the wrong way. I think you write it for general use, and then you add the edge cases to the feat. So it's like...
yeah, the new ones are more edge casey. The existing rogue feats are often very general.
No, but you see what I'm saying? It's like, make it work on anything. And it's like, so it could be like, oh, I escape, and then I have the choice of either taking something of theirs or sicken them one, so that way it works
just gives you an option so it can work more often.
Right. And then
I agree.
Otherwise, now it's like, oh, it only works if they have items. That's way too edge case. So,
and doing Sicken with Thievery is something nobody can do normally. So it's actually kind of enticing.
Exactly.
And you could be like a critical success Sickens too, which is very, very, very nasty.
And on top of that, getting grabbed, I know my players would be like, I get grabbed. Okay, I use my, swipe souvenir, which is 2 actions, by the way, which is not nothing. And then you do that, you get out.
It saves you 1 action, but it's just pretty niche.
Yeah, but then you mess it up. You mess them up. You get out, and you mess them up. So that's so gratifying. You're like, yeah!
Someone in chat said maybe you could apply poison to them while you're grabbing you. It's like throw in the poison on them.
Already, because if you're grabbed, you start stabbing them, because that's what our guys would do.
Oh, sure, that's just a regular thing to do, though. You don't need a feat for that.
But you see, I mean, you know where I'm coming from.
That's a good
point. From a designer, like, these are so edge case, and I'm a little sad that this isn't doing what we said it's doing, but whatever. All right,
so here we go. I mean, you can add that in your game.
I know.
Next thing that was added. So nimble dodge with nimble roll meant that you could try to dodge your enemy's first attack and just roll away and mess up the rest of their turn already, as long as they miss. Now, with Nimble Strike, you can also hit them with the same reaction, regardless of the result of their attack roll, too. Even if you don't get the roll, you can hit them. Mm-hmm. So with that and preparation and maybe opportune backstab, you have this build where it's just like, you're going to get 2 attacks with no multiple attack penalty off your turn, like no matter what. Like if they attack you, you'll get to attack them and defend yourself. If your allies attack them, you'll get to attack them. There's some real strong stuff coming in at this point, now that Nimble Strike was added. It does have a lot of prerequisites, though. So next up, Sneak Savant was changed to Sneak Adept because just like the other Savant snare, well, some of the other Savants were changed to Adept, probably because Savant being associated with autism. Critical debilitations. This was not a change, but I missed this in the original core rulebook when I was going through Rogue, and it just was in there. The incapacitation trait shouldn't be on the feat itself, which is not an action, but in the body text of the debilitation. But I think everyone knows that the incapacitation trait being on the feat means that the effect in the feat is supposed to be incapacitation. It's pretty clear. It wasn't in quite the right place. And I noticed that and I was like, that's been there the whole time.
Well, the layout's a little weird. They messed up. I'm looking at the layout. Actually, they messed something up with the indents, but that's just me.
Interesting.
I'm nuts.
Anyhow. Yeah, it's good to check. So Cognitive Loophole added a thing to prevent, ironically, a loophole within Cognitive Loophole, where it is changed to prevent you from suppressing an effect that you chose to have affect you. Because at that point, you're not finding a loophole in your enemy's commands anymore. So if you're like, I'm casting this spell on myself that has drawbacks, you can't just like find a loophole in your own spell. Next, after that, Perfect Distraction. Also, not a change, but in the original, I missed when I was writing this feat for Rogue that it said you could concentrate to keep it up. It should have said sustain or something, or like use an action with the concentrate trait, and it doesn't, and it still says that. But I think it's very clear what it's supposed to be. I'm also kind of surprised, just not in this feat, but it does the Mislead spell, that the Mislead spell kept its OGL name. Since while it's a very generic word, Mislead, the fact that something that is called Mislead very specifically creates an illusory copy of you while making you invisible is like a very specific effect for Mislead to do. And similar things, whether we're on the edge, I saw their name change, but it has been kept the same, so you don't have to worry about learning a new name for Mislead. So Steal Spell, another Eldritch Trickster feat, was removed because Eldritch Trickster was removed. Easy enough. Next off, Powerful Sneak was changed from a mainly ruffian feat that lets you use your strength to kind of brute force and change the sneak attack to not be precision anymore, which covers you anytime you need it, to now it stays precision but ignores the immunity and resistances in precision, which is a little awkward because there are effects in the game that are not immunities or resistances that are sometimes like, this has on a DC whatever flat check, it negates the precision damage. And now the new Powerful Sneak does not get you past that because it's not an immunity or a resistance. It also ups sneak attack damage now, in addition to what it did before, by a very small amount, about 2 damage on average when you get it. Because of the fact that it turns your 1s and 2s into 3s, which raises your average per die from 3.5 to 4. So your average for 4d6 goes up from a total of 14 to a total of 16. So it did get a significant power increase of doing 2 more sneak attack damage. It's not huge, but it's significant, while also sometimes not working. But it's no longer a special thing for ruffians to make them feel good, but once again gives more things back to the thief, which already had advantages over ruffian. Last 2, Trickster's Ace, the one that like you have a weird contingency up, has been removed. And lastly, Reactive Distraction. Again, not a change, but something that I noticed that was not quite right when I wrote this feat before, is that the area effect language probably should not have been using the word targeted to say that you both get targeted if you don't move it out of the area, because the area effects usually don't target things. They just hit everything that's in the area. But I think everyone knows what it means, and no one has ever had a problem running that. So that is everything in Rogue. Now, Steven, have your Rogue players even gotten to the levels of some of these 18th level feats that we've been looking
16.
at here?
They just turned 16.
What did they take for 16? Do you happen to know?
It was so funny. As you said that, I was like, let me look up and see what he took. I just got his character last night, so let's see.
Let's see. I'm going to try to guess that he may have taken blank slate to cover. Or no, it's not fighty enough.
Put on my glasses. All right, let's see.
Maybe he took.
Here he is. Advanced.
Dispelling Slice. Maybe he took Dispelling Slice. Let's see.
He is. Let's see. I'm looking at his character.
Okay, here we go. What do you think he took in chat, everybody?
16 hit points, resistance fire 5.
Write in chat what you think Steven's rogue Steven's player's rogue, who always was taking the ones to try to protect himself from the bad case scenarios.
I'll tell you,
took his level 16 rogue.
I'll tell you, he's got some good freaking. He has a +2 keen, shifting, striking, cold iron rapier. And then
it's not even greater striking.
He has to put greater striking on that. I think it's just he didn't put it in. He also He also has Storm Flash, by the way.
Oh, Storm Flash is awesome. Sanderson Tavares thinks cognitive loophole. I also thought that was a possibility, since it would help this very risk-averse player to avoid certain mental effects.
Hold on, I was looking up his. I was
thinking Dispelling Slice could dispel something bad that was on the enemy that was messing him up.
Feats.
That's a good guess, Sanderson. Let's see what the rogue player actually took. Oh, there's a guess for Cloud Step because he took Light Step before. That's also possible too, to be able to get to creatures by walking on the air.
Hey, what can you take at these levels? I don't even.
It could have been Blank Slate, Cloud Step.
Well, let's see. His bounce
Cognitive
back,
Loophole, Dispelling Slice, Perfect Distraction, Reconstruct the Scene, Swift Illusion, or some other feat from lower levels, or like an archetype or something.
Dual Weapon Blitz. Now we had that. Dual Weapon. Nimble.
Oh, Dual Weapon Blitz is from Dual Weapon Warrior archetype. So that means that he could have a Dual Weapon Warrior feat there.
Underwater, Trap Finder, Assurance Battle, Cloud Jump. He took Cloud Jump.
He took Cloud. Okay, there you go. Oh, wait, Cloud Jump or Cloud Step? Because Cloud Jump is a skill feat.
Yeah, he already had
Did he take 2-Weapon Flurry from the 2-Weapon Warrior
wait.
archetype? Because that's very possible.
Skill, his Double Slice,
the one that gives him 2 attacks every time as a Flourish Press.
He took Dual Onslaught already.
Oh, okay. That's at 14th.
Critical.
So I think he may have taken 2-Weapon Flurry, now that I know he's a Dual Weapon Warrior.
2-Weapon Flurry. I think.
Yep, I got it. He took 2-Weapon Flurry. So that means after his first attack of the round, he can spend 1 action to make 2 more attacks.
Yeah.
Very solid.
That's what he took. Sorry, it doesn't list. It just lists them alphabetically, so I'm having to. And you know how many feats? There's 2 pages of feats here.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like I'm just trying to. It doesn't list the level either.
You got it.
So
So that's all the changes to Rogue. It wasn't a ton of changes. And I would say that, like, with some of the classes, you could see, like, a very clearly that this is what they were doing with the changes. Or, there weren't many, but there were ones that were, like, with Bard. The changes were kind of small, very small, but elegant. And it was always like, oh, well, this change to give all martial weapons cascaded over to what the warrior mutes needed something else. Whereas with Rogue, I really liked a lot of the flavor of some of the new things that were in there. But I felt that some of the things that were added were, like, kind of like rich get richer, while sometimes adding new options that didn't stack up to the old options that got buffed that were already near the top. And so I think that the power was a little bit less level between them. Even so, not much changed. Rogue was a great class before. Rogue is a great class now. Everything that was added was flavorful, even if like maybe some of them, because they're niche enough, could use like a little bump to it.
So I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I never looked at this closely. It's like, I mean, you helped write these. It's like, why don't they do it the way I describe, which is like, it's like, it seems like there's two ways you can write these feats. You can either write them that they do very specific things in very specific situations, or they work in all situations, but depending upon the situation, they might do different things. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like the subtle difference. Like
no, you're absolutely right. Where like, they can do something small in every situation and then be better in their special situation.
Right.
Like we were talking about with Sicken, which isn't even that small.
Swipe Souvenir is a perfect example of that. It's like, why can't it just, it's like that is a great ability, but it's so niche that you probably will never use it, where people won't take it.
Right. Or the one where you remove your disguise, which is just such a cool thing to incentivize trying to do. But the payoff, I think, the payoff isn't high enough, first of all. And second of all, arguably, the fact that you were taking off your disguise for an action, you could have been creating a diversion with that action or something else like that. And you need to succeed the same number of deception checks. So it arguably didn't save you much action economy either. So, maybe taking off the disguise could have become a free action to remove it. There are a lot of possible options for both of those two. They're great ideas that like maybe if you add a little bit more to them would be more up there. So some people in chat are saying they don't really like that Gang Up may homogenize characters, or that that Thief Rogue Unarmed may homogenize with Monk or Martial Artist. That might happen. I think that you'll find that meta characters do show up way more than you might think, because people read online which ones are the strongest and they build that. So we will start seeing more homogeneity, but there's still going to be a lot of people who take the other feats too. So that's good. And if you want, you can always take the cool changes that were made to the not already top tier stuff in Rogue and not keep the changes that were made to the top tier stuff in your home game. You can be like, well, we're not going to adjust Gang Up or the Thief, say, but we are going to take these cool things for Ruffian and the Marshal weapons, and Scoundrel could have used the upgrade even if Thief and Gang Up didn't get the upgrade, and all these other things. So the beauty of the remaster is you can pick and choose, and the remaster is full of amazing ideas and cool stuff. So even if there's one or two things you're like, wow, that was a rich get Witcher, it's easy enough not to apply those. And I think the game and your table are healthier if you're willing to take that kind of analytical look and not just be like, well, Paizo printed it in a book and therefore I'm doing exactly that, but instead be like, no, you know what? We know what we want to do for our table. So sometimes that'll be what Paizo printed. Sometimes that's Roll for Combat stuff or some other third party. Sometimes that's our own homebrew material is what's right for us. And being willing to do that instead of just be like, well, the designers must have known because they're designers, so we're just only going to do what's in the book, can be dangerous. Now, on the other side, being like, ignoring that the designers had a reason for things and just immediately doing a major house roll without even trying the original rules can also be too far on the other side of the pendulum, right? Because then you might not understand why things were decided in a certain way. You need to try to find that middle ground where you're willing to give things a shot. You try to understand where the designers are coming from and understand what your own group finds is fun, and realize that designers I'm a designer. I wrote a lot of the original PF2 core rulebook, game mastery guide, etc. I want you to try to look at your own table and to find your own rules that are the best for you. I don't want you to have to do exactly what I wrote or what is written in the books if that's not what's most fun for everybody at your group. But not just you, the one person, but everybody at your group together with a social contract.
So I would say you should let everyone retrain whenever they want. Well, every level at least, and like pretty much just let them retrain. Now, I'm not saying retrain into different classes, but how many times have otherwise people have analysis paralysis and you want to try out these very specific edge case feats and like our guys, I let them retrain, so they try stuff out and then they're like, yeah, this didn't work, I'm going to redo my class. They're not changing from rogue to wizard or something like that. I probably wouldn't allow, but pretty much allow them to retrain. And who knows, like, yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense that they totally retrain their class and they can do all these new things, but who cares? I mean, and now they're having fun, and more importantly, otherwise you get bored. Like, you get bored with doing the same things over and over. Like, the thing about my rogue is that he has basically gone through, I think, like 4 different types of builds. So he's played him
Nice.
4 different ways. Like first he was strength based, then he was dex based, now he's the dual striking, mobility based. And as you can see, he's really getting into that. Like that's his jam. Is that he's really getting into the moving around and flanking and attacking multiple times. That's what he likes. So, but before that he wasn't that at all. Before that he was like this brute force frontline melee guy, which is really kind of a fighter, but he tried to be a fighter. Whatever. It ended up being it's good. It's good that he did it this way, and I like that he's able to like retrain. I will say that, and this kind of proves it, is that I told you we have a monk and we have a monk and we have a thief, a rogue in our party, and they both cross-trained into each other's, and they take.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that. That's
the
funny.
same feats every level,
and they're going to get super buffed by the fact that if they're a thief rogue, that they can do dex to damage now with the monk stuff.
They don't talk to each other. That's the crazy part. I don't know. They always seem to go down the same path. It's so weird, but it is funny because the monk is definitely. Well, the monk is out damaging, but the monk can't hit as frequently. So, although the rogue, it's actually nice to see that in action. So the monk will miss a lot more frequently, but because the rogue has so many, he's got that one attack, he always hits. He always hits with one attack, and that is a game changer because he attacks twice, and it's like, well, one always hits.
Yeah,
and
if the rogue wants to hit more often, the rogue could consider getting preparation and opportune backstab to make more attacks at full bonus when the other allies hit.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like he doesn't do as much damage, but he hits more frequently, so it all evens out. It's like, well, which is better? It's like you do more damage, but you hit less. You do less damage, but you hit more frequently. So it's hard to say. They both kind of balance each other out in the end. But it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, so I'm very interested, and all in all, I would say that there weren't really that many changes to the rogue, and a lot of them I think were good ideas. Like a couple of them made already strong options more powerful, but those are easy enough to adjust if your group is getting a weird meta build in them. And then there's a few new things that are just too cool to not maybe buff them up a little bit in my game to see if people are going to be more willing to take them, because I want rogues who go around taking off their mask and being Lupin the Third, who's always disguised as somebody else or something like that. That's just a fantastic mental image.
Yeah. In our game, it's the sorcerer who's doing that all the time. He's the one who's always disguising himself, and as a goblin, no less.
I mean, that's hilarious, though.
I know. It's like, that's the funny thing. It's like, yeah, well, the problem is once they get rid of surprise round, getting rid of surprise round kind of messed up. I understand why they did it, but it's like, it's difficult to not have a surprise round, because instead what I end up have to do is make a pseudo fake surprise round. We'll be like, oh, you're attacking and everyone else is just like getting their crap together, like that, which ends up being the surprise round. Like,
I mean, you don't have to do that though. Just roll initiative.
What do you mean? No, but
just
we do
roll initiative.
Oh, I know we do roll initiative, but then if they're supposedly got the jump on them.
Oh, yeah. If the enemies don't have their weapons out, then they're sitting at the table playing cards, then they spend their first round doing things. But with the surprise round, it's worse because they get free attacks, and then they have to. Yeah, then they have to do that, and they could lose initiative, so they could wind up having 3 rounds before they did anything. I was going to say,
you're actually right. It's just, it's like, I don't, maybe the rules, I didn't see if they handle that in the DM's guide or the core.
I think it's to me, it's handled pretty well, but it's hard to explain it to people who are used to a surprise round.
Yes,
it definitely
right,
is.
Right. I think it just needs to be like, here's how you should handle it. It's like when in surprise, it's like just run it normally, but instead of having surprise, have them spend their actions, have them spending the round not doing something or getting ready for the attack, rather than, and that quote is surprise. Like, I think that's the best way to handle it personally. We did not get one super chat, and like no questions.
That's
nothing.
true. Well, we had some questions, but I was able to. They were all really on topic, so I was able to like interweave them into our narrative that we were talking about things. Like they were discussing and having a lot of opinions together with us. So that's why I just kept saying, "Oh yeah, this person in the chat said this." People are now talking about off guard overflow and how much that they've been using gang up. Mm-hmm. It looks like. Sanderson Tavares has the experience that's most similar to mine, where just so many people already said gang up was a big one to take, and I always felt there were other ways around it, and Sanderson's in the same way, but also now thinks with all the new buffs, it becomes harder and harder to say that you're not going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And Christopher gave us our first super chat. Thanks, Christopher. Christopher is very enthusiastic about the rogue throughout the chat.
Oh, their first super chat ever.
Yeah, that's true.
Look at that. On a live
there
stream.
is a question. The question for the super chat is, how are we doing? How are we doing?
A little tired.
I'm definitely tired because we kind of took this upon ourselves during the same time as the RPG Superstars final judging and the same time as a Kickstarter and multiple other things. But it's so exciting to be in a time with the remaster, do all these streams, but it also is a lot because I'm doing a lot of research every day for a new class. And then we're doing these streams and we have all these other things. So I'm tired, but excited at the same time.
I'm tired and excited, but it's also, this is the weirdest time of year because it's right before holidays and people going away. I feel this to me is a kind of a stressful time of year because it's like I feel constant pressure before the holidays, and then I know like the last 2 weeks of the year are always sort of a brain fart,
like a release valve.
Brain fart because no one's doing anything, so it's hard to like get work done and no one's concentrating and everyone's distracted. So I feel the pressure to get a lot done now because before people start checking out mentally. And,
I know what you mean. Yeah. I remember the year that I was working during Christmas at Linda's parents' house that we had gone to because PF2 had to come out and I was doing the spells and they knew that I had to sit with people because otherwise like it would be very unsociable. But I was like, you can talk to me, but if I say I'm doing a polymorph spell, I need everyone not to talk to me because those have so many moving parts.
Well, on top of that, you did Intelligent Weapon, which I've read through now 3 times, and I'm still
It's got so many corner cases. It's so cool, though, and it works. It works now, which I'm very happy with. No, but there's a reason we saved it for last.
Yeah, it's really
There's a reason that we saved it for last, and it's because we needed to check it and double check it and triple check it.
Well, or more than triple. Well, it's amazingly. It's so funny because in my mind, I mentally rank because people do this now because they're saying, oh, like the thaumaturge is really complex and the kineticist. Like people do rank these, classes in complexity. And I play a lot of these board games. Like the Gloomhaven. It's not Gloomhaven so much.
Yeah, Gloomhaven or Spirit Island has a complexity rating on each spirit.
Right. Okay, same thing, right. So I'm playing these games like Oathsworn, which has, and the cool thing about Oathsworn is you can change out your classes between chapters if you want. And they have them ranked from, 1 to 5. And let me tell you, the 5 is a nightmare. Like it's really hard and the 1 is really easy. And no, I think it goes to 1 to 6, and it's like the 6 is just like, oof, the mental gymnastics you need to do to keep track of this thing, but they're amazingly powerful. And I feel that way when we're doing our ancestries and we're doing our classes. And I'm just like, some of these are, I feel like all of them are pretty complex, but for better, for worse, the Intelligent Weapon is the 10 out of 10 of complexity. Because it's like, because it's a combination of you're playing a weapon and it's a pet class, and it's like pet class, which my favorite class, the most complex class by far. There's a lot of reasons for it, way too much to go into, very hard to do. You have it as it can be a pet class or not a pet class. So it's like, okay, it's not even that, it's worse because it could be both. So you have to have the case of like, well, how does it work when it's not a pet class? And how does it work when it is a pet class? And how do you invest in things? And how do you hold things? And I'm like, oh my God, it's very
it's hard because you're a weapon.
Very
but here's a question for you, Steven. Some people said maybe we should put a difficulty ranking on each element for Eldamon because some elements are simpler than others. Do you think we should do that? But not a difficulty in terms of complexity. Like, because would you like sow seeds on the battlefield to create difficult terrain with various effects, and then you can harvest them later on for special benefits? So that's more complex than fire, where you just burn everything.
I actually do think as a chart, like maybe just general.
Yeah, they were saying that we might want to do it at the table.
I wouldn't want to do it in the core. Like, I wouldn't want to be it in the actual.
In the element header.
No, I don't want to put in the element area, like nothing like that. Not like it's like rare or something. I would rather have a chart.
I think a table could work.
Table and just have a table.
I put a note to myself that said that we might want to do that in my list of things that we could do during layout. Yeah. And so I would decide to ask you now on the air to see what.
No, I would do that.
What you thought.
Well, because also people want to have a general sense. It's not even a sense of like, you know, how hard is it? It's more of a sense of what mental gymnastics do you need to do? And some people don't like playing. I know a lot of people who don't like playing spellcasters because they just don't want to deal with spells. You know, they just want to play, you know, melee, you know, and the frontline fighters, and that's it. Because that's all they want to deal with. Like, they just, like, they're there to relax. And then, you know, I'm thinking back when I used to play WoW, I played a hunter, and hunters had like an 8-button rotation when I was playing, and it was complex. You know, it was a lot going on. Like, I played hunter, and my friend Chris, the guy who's the monk, he played a warlock, and let me tell you, our rotations were insane. You know, it was fun, you know, because we like that. But then we know people who didn't. You know, it's like what you use to relax is different for everyone else.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
You know, I think it's useful. I put it this way: there's no reason not to do it. How about that?
That makes sense. So here's some questions in chat. One asked, what happened in the end with UPW, United Paizo Workers Union? So on June 6th of 2023, after 601 days of getting it organized, getting lots of discussions, you know, with the union team that was, I was initially on it, but I eventually left for Roll for Combat, and they did an amazing job finishing it off with management, and they ratified the contract on June 6th. It says on the United Paizo Workers page, along with raises across the board, preserved and expanded benefits, and enhanced protection for workers, the contract provides the framework for continued collaboration between union, labor, and management to everyone's benefit. And so that's a major milestone for really the entire industry to have that happen. And there's a reason why United Paizo Workers was like chosen as one of the unions that went to talk like to the White House, right? That one time where Alex Spidel went to the White House with some of the more famous unions like the Amazon and some of the other ones. So that was really cool. And I am really glad to hear that, like, especially that salaries have increased, because everybody there deserves it. So there are also questions about Thanksgiving food. Steven, do you eat roast or turkey?
Turkey. Well, we have, so here's what happened is that, so my family's very small and my wife's family's very small. So like we never had big Thanksgivings ever growing up. And like, I just never did. I have no family because both my parents were single children. And so, like, it's like actually, you know, like everyone, and I only have one brother. So we always had really small. And on top of that, my brother was a vegetarian and I didn't really like turkey, and my dad liked turkey. So growing up, we had turkey and like salmon because I like salmon and my brother would eat it. And then my dad would have the turkey. I like turkey, but here's the funny thing is that
you like it now, but you didn't like it before?
It's okay. It's all right. I don't mind turkey. It's not my favorite. I'd rather have like chicken or a million other things. What we'll often do is we'll have turkey, but they started doing this thing where it was my brother-in-law's father insisted on having a honey roasted ham at Thanksgiving. Now, I never had honey roasted ham before. It's just not a thing we have here in New York. It's just like, I don't know anyone who ever did that, really. And so it was the first time ever. This was like 10 years ago. And we're like, oh, let's try it. And it was so good. We're like, oh my God, this is like so freaking good. This honey roasted ham, which is like ham and sugar, basically. So now we always have at all of our Thanksgivings turkey and a honey roasted ham, and then a million sides. Like, we have a lot of sides, so that's actually we have more. The sides are actually really the show. And if you remember, my wife and her sister are like cooks, so people. We don't have it with a lot of people, but the people who show up bring a lot of food home. Let me put it that way. They make really good cornbread. My wife makes this insane corn dish. So this year, I don't know what we're doing. We sometimes go to the parade. And sometimes I get tickets. There actually are tickets. There's like you could sit and see it. So sometimes I go to the parade, especially if the weather's good. So we'll see. I don't even know what I'm doing, to be honest. So
Christopher says RFC cookbook.
I know, I saw that. She won't do a cookbook. The problem with cookbooks are impossibly hard to do.
Don't they have really high regulations?
Yes, not regulations. You have to make sure that you're not copying anyone. It has to go through severe research. It's extremely hard to do cookbooks. So, anyhow,
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's really tough. But yeah, Thanksgiving. I'm trying to think. Like, it's an okay holiday for us. You know, it was a little bit more fun when our kids were younger and we would do it with other families. Now it's like my daughter's coming from college, so that'll be fun. And then we're going to do it like probably again, it's like a small group of like 10 people and that sort of it. So.
Yyep.
And you're with your
makes
family,
sense.
so you're going to have.
Yeah, I used to for the last few years, we just kind of just stayed up in Washington to get with Linda and myself. But yeah, now I'm with my parents. So it'll probably be with them and like some children of friends of my parents who are international and can't go back to their country for Thanksgiving and wouldn't anyway because it's not a holiday in that country, but also like they didn't have another place to go. So that's probably what we're going to do for Thanksgiving this year. Like my brother who has 2 kids is going to just do it where he is, and my other brother's like in Africa, so he's not going to come for Thanksgiving. That would be wild.
He's in Africa.
Yeah.
Wow, that's far.
That's pretty far. He was in England before, and Africa's actually not that much farther with the place he went. So he's always far away.
Okay, well there you go. I mean, my brother's in L.A. and my parents are in Florida, but my sister-in-law's in the city. And so we usually spend Thanksgiving with her, and then she invites a few people over. I think we switch off every year, like whether it's in my house or their house, they either come to us or we come to theirs. So I don't know what we're doing this year. But we had some friends who invited us. So I don't know. I have to check with the wife to see what's going on.
Sounds good.
But
so now let's see if we can get to 100 and be forced to do a musical interlude because we're at 87 likes. Because Steven, you said that we have a secret bonus topic that you told no one except me that we might just roll into for everybody here about a completely breaking news that just came out very, very recently.
Yes.
But I feel like this is the perfect time to do a song if we're going to do a song, like before we get into the secret bonus topics. So if anybody can get the likes up to 100, then we can do a bonus song, which may be Good Riddance from Hades. And then do the bonus topic.
I don't know that song, so that's all you. So I've never even heard of that song.
That is fine. I can do it before.
Yeah.
In the treasured lost episode of Arcade Mark, where I convinced Linda to do a sing along because she actually sings, as we saw on the Druid stream, which she said we're not ever putting up on YouTube, and it has been lost in the vault forever. That song was on there, so I actually know this song. I've played Hades before. We only need 2 likes. I'm probably going to have to.
What is this from?
It's from the game Hades. Have you played Hades?
Yeah,
it is great.
Yeah.
It's the one that Eurydice and Orpheus, they have multiple, but it's the one that she's always singing before you help her out at first, and then they do it as
I
a
don't
duet.
remember that. Yeah, I'm actually getting ready. I mean, I'm playing too many games because I'm not finishing anything.
We got to it.
Oh, okay. Well, real quick, I'm gonna play Yakuza Like a Dragon, The Man Who Has No Name, which is like a super quick. It started out like as a down. It was supposed to be a DLC, and I think they made it in 6 months, and now it's its own game. And they're like, it's super short. It's only like 20 hours, and I'm like, 20 hours used to be a full game. Now that's a short game. I'll take a 20-hour game over any. Like I keep playing 100, 200-hour games, so I'll take a 20-hour game. But Yakuza 8, Yakuza Like a Dragon. Oh my god. That game is so good, and there's sequels coming out. I can't wait. And it takes place in Hawaii, which is going to be awfully fun. Anyhow, so what are you doing for 100?
Okay, so I'm gonna do "Good Riddance" from Hades. It was requested by the chat, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm making sure that I get the lyrics up because. Okay, here we go. Farewell to all the earthly remains, no burdens, no further debts to be paid. Atlas can rest his weary bones, weight of the world all falls away in time. Goodbye to all the plans that we made. No contracts. I'm free to do as I may. No hunger, no sleep except to dream. Mild and warm, safe from all harm. Calm.
Is it over?
Good riddance to all the thieves, to all the fools that stifled me. They've come and gone and passed me by. Good riddance to all. And then it goes back to the refrain.
Oh my god! You see, people, you can't hear it as well because I have filtering on, and the problem is that the filtering is cutting out a lot. And also, these are not the best mics for singing. So
that's true. Also, I was looking at it and trying to play some of the things so I could hear it in the background, and wound up with Eurydice's part, whereas I usually do Orpheus's part. So that was especially more difficult and more off than I normally am, which is off. So I should have played Orpheus's, and I didn't.
That's all right. So
it's fine. Eurydice's is maybe actually easier because it's not as high as Orpheus's, but it's not the one I'm familiar with. All right, so bonus topic.
Hold on. So the bonus topic is. Let me just set up. Hold on, give me a second.
Oh, that was my problem. I played something that did Eurydice and then Orpheus afterwards. That's I got the wrong one.
Hold on a second. Fill in, talk to
Okay.
people. I have to just answer something real quick.
All right. So Esther did a super chat there. And Steven's going to put on the new topic after he answers this. So stick around because I will tell you what it is while Steven's getting it. So basically, there was a major update about the 2024 core rulebooks for D&D, and it's fascinating that there are some similarities and parallels to things that we're seeing in Pathfinder, which could be a coincidence. I mean, there are people from Paizo who are now like on the D&D team, but you know what? I've seen enough convergence and like evolution of things that were obviously not decided based on each other. Like Pathfinder did a circus adventure path, and then there was a circus carnival one from D&D, but they were too close to have been decided based on each other. They were obviously done independently. Or another fun one, like Pathfinder did a tarot deck related adventure path that was led by Jason Tondro, and then Wizards of the Coast did a deck of many things product that is also led by Jason Tondro, which is probably also a coincidence, but is also very funny that it's the same person who did both of them.
Okay, let me start.
So what have we got from this new update that that Wizards just put out? Because it's kind of interesting.
So earlier today, D&D, aka Wizards of the Coast, did a video, and it's pretty long too. It's about 20-ish minutes. D&D Studio Update 2024 Core Rule Books and Survey Results. So I said a couple of days ago that I was looking at when they're going to start releasing the 2024 core rules, because the way it works in book publishing is that you have to start submitting your books into the various sales systems 9 months ahead of time. In fact, I right now am putting in books, we're in November, and I'm putting in books that are going to be sold in July, aka Gen Con of 2024 now. So I have to start submitting any books that I want to start selling at Gen Con probably no later than next month, aka December. So with that being said, they have to start submitting their books to the same systems. These are the systems that everyone uses.
I thought that Wizards just always does it later than everybody else. What I heard is that because they're Wizards and they know that people will take their books anyway, they just submit it far later than anybody.
You can submit it far later, but it's extremely risky. I mean, what you'll often do is you'll just do placeholder books, and with like the bare minimums, like all you need is the ISBN number and a price, the number of pages, the name of the book, and a cover. And the authors usually helps. That's it. Like, you just need the bare minimum. Any of that can be changed later. But the point is that you need to start getting them into systems. So they at least need to put it in. And they can change the dates. You can always push the dates back. Obviously, you can't really move them forward, but you can, not easily. So I agree that they can put them in late, but they can't put them in that late, because unless they're really working extremely closely with all these book publishers,
they traditionally,
worldwide,
all I know is that even someone as big as Paizo can't put them in late. Paizo's not that big. They have to put them in on time.
Yeah,
but
you can't.
Wizards very consistently put them in much later than the normal date. And I don't know why. I can't explain it, Steven. I don't know what allows them to do that or not, but Wizards has announced books with much less fanfare, because I think they know everybody's going to pick them up because they're the D&D books. So, and by less fanfare, sorry, I mean they give fanfare at the time. I mean less time. They've announced it with much less time leading in than is what is normally considered to be the minimum amount of time for some of these systems. Right.
So anyhow, we have in this, it's a very long discussion. You should probably watch it. It's pretty interesting.
Did you post the link in chat?
Yeah, we'll put the link in chat. But what makes it interesting is that after going through the Pathfinder core rules for the last week and a half, they are literally calling it the core books of 2024 and how they are doing. And it's funny because Pathfinder just redid this, they're doing this now, and they're like, we're redoing the layout to make sure it's easier to understand. They mentioned they updated the font, which has been like the number one pain point I've heard of people, because the font is incredibly small and hard to read in the books, which sounds like not that big a deal, but it's a huge deal. Like, you can't have unreadable books, especially if you're going to be, using them constantly. They're reorganizing the structure of the books. And this is
You've been talking about the font for a while.
Oh, I talk about the font forever, because it's like, because there's small, well, again, I used to teach typography in college, and I used to teach this, and there's certain generally accepted sizes and types of fonts to be used, and they broke the rules. And like, it's one thing if you're reading some book that no one cares about that breaks the rules, or like it's just like some nothing book, but it's like, this is a book that sells massively worldwide consistently. You kind of need it to maybe follow the rules of general layout and design and make the font big enough that people can read it without having to strain their eyes, and back to, like, I'm thinking some of these were literally, they made some of these design decisions so that it couldn't as easily be scanned and turned into a PDF and pirated, which, I won't get into that as a whole other subject, but there's I think some of these design decisions were actually made to help them avoid piracy. Which,
interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good subject that we should do at some point, because that's an interesting theory. Now, I do want to push back on the naming it core rulebooks thing, but I'm going to use some history for that. Usually you're the one who brings in history, but core rulebook set is literally what those products were called before Pathfinder even existed. Like, in 3rd edition, you could buy the core rulebook set, and it was the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. Then that's why Pathfinder, I think, called it the core rulebook, that was all in one for the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, because that's what things used to be called. So it is definitely not copying Pathfinder in any way to call this the core rulebooks. That's just what D&D has always called them.
I was just being snarky, but
fair enough. Here's
the big updates. They said that they want this to be the definitive book, and that you can play using the 2024 version, that it will be the Player's Handbook, the DMG, the Monster Manual, that it's going to be about 1,000 pages when you combine all of them, which
they said is the biggest yet.
Which is the biggest yet. They did mention, and this actually is where it starts getting fascinating, is that they're going to be adding treasure to the Monster Manual, it sounds like, and adding more magic items, which you probably have a lot of thoughts about, because that is one of the biggest issues with 5th edition, is that it doesn't really have an economy, and it doesn't really, it's like there's just no economy. It's just very difficult to figure out how treasure works, and they go out of their way to hide it. We've been able to reverse engineer it through a lot of work, a lot of effort in our books. And the way they do it is, it's a really strange system. Can you
tell me specifically what treasure things are moving to the Monster Manual?
Well, they said
is it just treasure
updates
tables?
On how treasure is going to be dealt with, in that they're going to update it, and they're going to include it perhaps or I think it is in the Monster Manual, and they're going to be adding more low-level magic items. They specifically say that in the
but does that mean that they're putting some items in the Monster Manual, or just that they're going to do treasure tables in the Monster Manual, and then the items are still in the Dungeon Master's Guide?
We don't know, but
okay, fair enough.
I think it's going to maybe go back to the original way, because the way it works, and the way 5th edition now works, is that the amount of treasure is dependent on the encounter level, not on the monsters. And we've gone through this. It's like the encounter determines the treasure, not the monsters. So if they're going to go back to, no, the monsters determine the treasure, not the encounter level, I don't know how, 2014 versions can work with 2000.
I don't think it's going. I am pretty confident.
Okay.
Actually, hold on. Time out.
Yes.
The monsters do determine the treasure in 5e, but they made the treasure per monster so low that it's less than 10% of your money, and everything comes from layered rewards that the GM just kind of hands out.
Right.
And that's the only way they can make it work, because the problem is that there's the way that XP is per creature. You wind up being the case where like fighting 3 of a monster that you fought back when items were like 100 times less expensive in the Dungeon Master's Guide is now a fight that you'll fight, but you're only fighting 3 of them. You're not fighting 100 of them, so you don't get as much money if the money was on each creature. And so they found a way, I think it was smart, to just not care, where just the amount on each creature is listed, but it's so low that it doesn't matter. And really all the real treasure, all the real value is in these layer treasures. And maybe they're changing it in the monster manual to not put all the value in the layer treasures, but they're going to be in big trouble if they try to put more of a percentage per creature, unless they completely revamp the encounter system, which they won't if they say that they think that the games can be played together. And I'm certain of this due to us doing the monster part system for 5e, is that because 3 OTUGs is a fight that you would fight like up to 10 levels after you fought 1 OTUG, but the items are now like 2 tiers away and they cost 100 times as much. It just will not work per monster unless like put it mostly in the layers.
Well, that's what I was getting at, because you and we have worked very closely, and you've did a lot of work on the economy system for Pathfinder. And it is so complex. It is so hard to balance these gold systems, these economic systems. You can't just start throwing in tables in the 2024 version and say, yeah, just use this, and it's going to work with 2014. It's like, no, it's going to replace it. You can't. It's impossible to have both systems work. It's hard enough to get one system work, let alone having 2 conflicting systems trying to work with each other. So I expect, and this actually is something that needs to be done. It's like, I hope that they just put together an actual table showing exactly, just like Pathfinder does. It's like, these levels, this is what you should give out, and here's where they're at every level. I mean, you wrote it, you know how it works. It's like, I don't need to explain it to you, but it's like, it's very clear, it's very straightforward. You know exactly where anyone is at. If you want to make a level 7 character, you know exactly how much gear to give them. It's literally spelled out, like, this is what you give them, and they can figure out what type of gear that is. And in 5e, it is a freaking mess. It is like a total disaster because no one knows anything. It's all over the place. And which is so... I
mean, the layer rules tell you where to put it, but the problem is that it's very variable, and the actual value of the items ranges extremely broadly, and it doesn't
I'm just wondering,
specify.
Because they've been concentrating so much, and they're still talking about the feedback from the classes. Like, they talk about the classes constantly.
Well, classes are what people hyper-focus on. Yes, even though sometimes things that are far outside the classes are more important to the field.
That's what you stole my thunder. That's what I was getting at. It's like, yes, the classes are what everyone's focusing on, but there's these underlying systems of the actual game, the math, if you will, the architecture, the structure, that it's built on. And that I'm more interested in seeing. That is what I'm actually curious about, because classes can come and go. But if the architecture of the actual system isn't working, it doesn't matter what the classes are doing. So that's what I'm very curious about. But it sounds like it sounds like they're pretty much ramping up to actually. I mean, I've been saying it a while. I know people at Wizards, and their production cycle is about a year between laying out the books, getting them back from the printer, getting them into the stores. So right now, if it's a year long and they're still doing play testing, the books have to be pretty close to done. And they're putting up so many books and trying to get them all over the world. I don't think it's going to make Gen Con. I think they're going to maybe have versions at Gen Con to show, but I don't think it's coming out until October next year at this rate. It sounds like it's not going to make it for the summer. I think it's going to be an October, November release, like for Christmas for next year. Because it's going to take, at best case scenario, it takes like 6 months for these books to be printed and shipped and get into warehouses. And then you need another few months for them to go from those warehouses into the Barnes and Nobles and the Kmarts and the H Marts and all the Marts. And then they have to get them into the stores. It's a long process. That's why Toy Fair is in February. It's in January, February, and that's where they show, okay, here's all the toys that you can buy for Christmas this year in January, because it's like they're done. They're all ready to go. They just need to know how many and where they're shipping them to. And that's it. So it's the same thing. Like, by Toy Fair, they need to have this done. They need to have everything finished. But the most fascinating thing is that they said they wanted this to be like a living system that's continuously evolving and
AKA
changing.
something that's on their website and evolving there, right?
I don't know. That's where...
Or on D&D Beyond. That's
Right.
how you make it evolve, right? You can do updates real fast if it's digital.
Correct. Now, they've already doing it this way. Like, I could argue that every version of D&D ever has been an evolved system. Every TTRPG ever has been evolved. So they're not saying anything new. But why would they go out of their way to specifically say that? Other than, were they just saying it for color? Or are they hinting at something? Because they also said books will be coming out next year and connected to the 50th anniversary and will continue into 2025. So it looks like they're going to actually be releasing books, not just next year, but then 2025, all connected to the 50th anniversary celebration. So we will see. One more thing I wanted to mention is that they are going to be at PAX Unplugged, which is next month in Philly, which is weird because they're not on the schedule and it's too late to add them to the schedule. So either they're working directly with PAX Unplugged and getting on the schedule, or doing something secret that we'll find out about later, or I don't know. Actually, I don't know how they're going to do it, or they're just going to show up. The problem is they did that at Gen Con, and no one was at the Gen Con, because they were so secretive about them, and they just didn't tell anyone, is that when they showed up at Gen Con and they had these talks, I didn't go to them, but I heard there were just not a lot of people at them, because it's like, you can only keep things secret for so long, because then suddenly no one knows about them and then no one shows up, So here they say they're going to go to PAX. That's great. But there's nothing on the schedule to see them. And people are already making up their schedules and making up their plans and figuring out what games they're going to be doing and what they're going to be, playing. And then suddenly, oh, we're going to have all this cool stuff, but people can't go to it because it's too late. They already signed up for all their other events. So I don't know what they're getting out of this. They're kind of being, I don't know. I feel like they're playing catch up all the time. That's my personal opinion. What do you think of all this? It sounds like, it's not like earth-shattering breaking news, but it sounds like they have to really start talking about 2024 now, because it's like they can't start talking about it in April or May. It's like, dude, by April or May, it's already halfway into 2025.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And they're very focused on the classes. It is really interesting. They got like 89.8% people who were strongly in favor of the new Fey Warlock. That is very high. Or it was 89%. That's very, very high.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to get that much, because even if you make it busted, which usually gets a significant percentage of people to be like, I love busted things, there's at least some people who are like, this is busted, so I don't like it now. So getting it up that high is probably pretty good for them. I can see why they were focusing on that. It sounds like most of the things that they were doing, people generally liked, except for the brawler fighter. They were very focused on classes because everybody is. It makes sense to be focused on classes because classes are what everyone pay attention to. If you don't have a class, or at least an ancestry / species / race to look at, like, a lot of other things get lost, and it's harder to like make something a marquee. Mm-hmm. Even though you're right, Steven, sometimes those behind the scenes rules are what's actually the most important change.
By the way, so they said here, each class is a full page spread. Each subclass has their own art. More spells will have their own art. There's going to be 80 new monsters, plus 80 plus new monsters. Better organization in the books. They're going to have more common items. They said it's going to be in the DMG, so maybe it's just the DMG. Common magic items in the DMG. Maybe treasure tables will be in Monster Manual. They also said they're going to address the lack of high-level monsters and high CR threats, which is interesting because no one plays the game above 10th level. Is it because they don't have things to play above 10th level because they're not in the books, or is it because the game is broken? It's the chicken and egg, you know. It's like I remember when, you know, when any of these books first come out, and we're doing this actually happening to us now in our games, is that I'm running 2 Pathfinder campaigns and they're both exactly at the same level. And once they got up to like level 14 and 15 and 16, they're fighting the same creatures. You know, it's suddenly like they're fighting very different creatures at the lower levels, but as they get to the higher levels,
there's just not as many.
Right. There's just not as many. So they keep fighting
Not
the same
everyone's
ones.
as dedicated as your players, Stephen, that they make it to level 16.
Right. But it is fascinating because as a GM, I'm like, oh, I already know how to run this monster because I already used it a couple of weeks ago. You know,
even though PF2 mostly, I think, works at higher levels. That was one for me. That was one of the big things I was trying really hard to do, because it's easy for someone to say online, even someone who's designing a game, to be like, well, that's only level, these high levels that don't come up that much. We don't care, right? It'd be like, design some busted capstone ability. It's just a capstone. It's aspirational. But for PF2, we actually did care about the highest levels, and I thought that was really cool. And you know, I played a lot of high level play in systems that were very unbalanced, and that I needed to do a lot of work as the GM to make it work. And I took that experience toward PF2, and I think we do have high level play that works, and I'm so thrilled about it. But even then, you don't get to it very often, even though it works. So, like, it's tricky. And if you focus too much on having the book that's all the high-level monsters, it's not always going to sell as well as the book that the more usable monsters. Unless you make it a coffee table book that is just like bragging rights. This has all the archdevils and demon lords in here. Some people might buy it. I call it a coffee table book because it's got these art and these really badass creatures that you're never going to use, but you just think it's cool to have them. Like, that's really your only way to do one that is all high level, or that has too many that are high level.
Anyhow, my point is that I've been saying this for a while, is that they are really getting close to running out of time and runway for 2024. In theory, you have 9 months. You have to give 9 months lead time to the stores. Right now, they're up to July for 2024 of getting their books into the system and selling them to these companies. And I know it sounds crazy, but that's how it works. Even if they, WotC, want to give it late, they only have maybe until January, February, and that's it. So we are going to find out, I think, very soon, like once and for all. Like, they have 2 options. They can either start advertising and telling everyone what to expect in 2024, which is what they probably should do, or they can do what they've been doing, which I don't think is a very good strategy, is they've been kind of keeping things so close to the vest is that they don't tell anyone anything, and then they sort of do these stealth, like, you know, these stealth talks. They did one at Gamehole Con.
It's not that. Oh, you mean the one where they all came into the Gamehole Con, like, in-world panel?
Nothing. Look up anything. There's nothing on it. No one was there. There's a few pictures. Nothing. And it's like they covered some pretty interesting things there, but no one was there. Gen Con, they released their schedule like a week before Gen Con. Everyone's schedule is determined 6 months before Gen Con starts.
Well, maybe they'd rather control the narrative by doing these videos that they record themselves, like the one that was in the link, which I'll put out again.
Why even bother showing up at these conventions?
At the other conventions? That's a good question.
Why
I actually don't know.
Why do any of this?
They lowered their presence at some of these conventions, so like, maybe it's for networking with individual people. Like, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
I know, but the point is that if you want to look at history, video games have done this. The best example recently is the Marvel's video game. The Marvel Avengers video game. They did a super stealth release, and it killed the game because they were so quiet about it and so stealth about it that when it eventually started to come out, that people moved on and bought other things. And D&D is keeping things so close to the vest and talking so little about it, and are giving out very little and only like showing up at the last second at these conventions. Like, you can't do that. Like, you have to really let people know about it ahead of time. You have to, it takes a lot of preparation and press, especially if you're doing something big like a 50th anniversary, that you can't just show up. Okay. If they think they're just going to show up, they're just going to announce this and the money's going to stream in and people are just going to buy it, I think they're going to have a very rude awakening, because there's a lot of other things in this world distracting people. A lot has changed between 2024 and 2014. A massive amount, and they really have to start priming the pump now and getting people ready to buy and get excited for this product. And they are strangely running out of time. I know it's only November 2023, but they don't have a lot of time to do this. They have to start now. So it's weird. It's just a little weird. But this first video was actually nice, because it looks like they are starting to eventually talk about what's happening. And to be honest, I want to know. I am very curious. I still love D&D. I want it to be better, and I would love to play it more than I can now. And I'm kind of waiting for these new rules before I try to start a new game. And
who knows? Maybe they will make more changes, and they're not talking about it now because they don't want to like scare people away from buying the interstitial products.
You're completely
and maybe the
right.
new changes will fix some of the like systemic issues. It's possible.
1,000% right. Is that what probably is happening? Is that they don't want to cannibalize their current sales, so they're being very careful. But you can't have it both ways. Like it's like, you're either going to cannibalize, you're either going to promote your upcoming product and then cannibalize your current sales, or you can talk about your existing product and then promote your upcoming product as late as possible, and then you're going to have a very weak launch, and it's going to take you forever to recover. And if they're thinking that we can have it both ways, we can keep selling product now, and then people were just going to come bang out of the gate and start buying this stuff because we tell them to, I think they're going to have a very rude awakening that it's just not going to work that way, especially next year with so many big new RPGs coming out that are not D&D, like Critical Role coming out with 2. so and there's more coming
here's
out.
My prediction. I'm going to counter predict against Steven. I know that's not always the best idea because his predictions are often accurate. I'm going to predict that it will do great because it's going to say D&D. It's not going to say remaster. It's not going to say like the new 2024 project. It's just going to say D&D. And people are going to be like, D&D, this new D&D just came out. This is Dungeons and Dragons, and just new people or people who are just starting are going to be enough. Or people who want it, who buy the set just to have the set, even though they don't play it that much, like the Monopoly things that you've been talking about before. I think they're going to do just fine on the core set. Now, whether this affects them on the later books or not, that's what we'll see. Or the books that come in between, the ones that are just before. But I think that no matter what, the new core set is going to do great. Yeah. That's my opinion.
We'll see. I'm very curious, but I am very closely following their marketing strategy and their marketing plan. And this is like the first hint we've seen for how they're going to start releasing the books for next year. And it looks like they're giving out very, very, very little. But I expect that's going to have to change very quickly, like, because if not, they're gonna have to rush this product out all at the same time. And I guess we're going to find out one way or the other.
That makes sense.
By the way, total aside, I am going to do a topic. I have a topic for us. We can't do it tomorrow. This was like our mini side session because normally we would do our live roll for combat for Wednesday. I have our topic, Mark, which will be, no one steal this. I'm looking at you, Rules Lawyer. D&D is so well known, and yet it is such a failure comparatively to its, because it's like There's this
We
thing.
talked about that before. It's brand awareness compared to its sales.
It's unbelievable. And I was just, because last night I was watching TV and there was some shows coming on and they're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm just like, how is it that every single person in the world knows about this game? It's talked about constantly. I see it on TV shows. I see it everywhere, and yet it doesn't do that well compared to its brand awareness. You know, it's just it's endlessly fascinating. And there's another one, but it's the complete opposite, which is the problem they wish they had, which is Avatar. Because Avatar, one of the most successful franchises in the history of the world.
The James Cameron films,
yes,
absolutely.
And
just for anyone who's paying attention.
Cultural impact.
Yeah.
And it's exact opposite. So
it made tons of money, but if you actually talk to people,
no cultural impact. Nothing.
No impact. None. It's the opposite of D&D.
None. And yet it makes billions. And it's like, how is that possible?
So if you know the business / psychological reason for that, I'd be fascinated, because we've talked about the fact that effect exists, but I don't know why, and I want to hear about why. So I am very interested in that.
I have some theories, because I've been thinking of that a long time. And it is a very interesting topic. And on top of that, here's where it gets de coup de grace. That I spoke to my brother who's in Hollywood for like an hour yesterday, and he was telling me things about the strike that will affect our hobby. It's going to affect everything, because it is
interesting about the Actors Guild.
Yes. Because it's not about that. It's about all these other things. And my brother,
because of some of the AI thing where they were replacing the actors.
It's not even that. It's about how movies now make so little money in comparison to everything else. That movies went from the tentpole to just like another piece of the puzzle. Like they're not even, because like that's
interesting.
We'll talk about it. Maybe
I'm very interested in that, because as you may know from my not knowing all the movies, I've always thought that the cinema experience is overrated compared to just watching in my home. So we can talk about that.
I might even get him on the show, because if you think I'm interested,
he knows way more about this than either of us. He would be a fantastic addition if you get him on it.
He'd do it. He's not doing. I'm like, what do you? I'm like, telling my brother, what do you do? He goes, it's amazing how good I am at doing nothing.
There you go. You can have Ghostbusters costume designer and many, many other films. Danny Glicker.
Yeah, he's totally not doing anything because there's nothing being made, so he's out of work until they go back. He has a million things lined up. He's not worried, but as soon as they start back, he goes back to work. But he has amazing takes, because he actually is in the thick of it, and he knows the stuff way better than. And no one's talking about. I mean, I follow it because I'm interested, but no one's talking about why these strikes are happening. And people think it's about AI and stuff. It's actually much more complex.
I mean, that was one of the. Oh, it's way more complex than that. Oh, yeah, it was one of the things, and I was trying to think about how it would go to our hobby, and that was an intersection I found. I know that it's mostly not about AI. I'm not trying to say that it's mostly about AI. I was just like, one of the things is AI, and that is something that might affect our hobby more than like whether or not people are paid residuals. Or some of the other changes that they're doing there.
It's mostly about how it's the most telling thing. He says every studio is trying to become Activision Blizzard, and he doesn't know anything about video games. And when he said that, I woke up. I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Because they're all trying to turn into Microsoft. Every single studio is turning into Microsoft." And I was like, fascinating. He'll explain.
This is going to be a fun topic for later on.
That will be a topic I think we can go through, but it's all related because it has to do with brand awareness and marketability way more than because things used to be built on people, and now they're trying to build them on brands. And this is also what Disney was trying. Anyhow, there's another topic for another day, but we can talk about it. But it is fascinating because I think WotC is trying to do that in their own way. And they're doing
it makes sense.
They're doing it in their own way.
Thanks for joining us for both topics, everyone, and my failed attempt to sing the correct part of Good Riddance.
It wasn't failed.
I mean, but I wound up getting Eurydice's part instead of Orpheus's. And so it was not, even if it succeeded in some ways at singing Eurydice's part, it was not the one I was expecting to do.
Well, that was your problem.
Yeah, it was completely my problem. That's why I said it was failed. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow on The Witch, which had a large number of changes with Jessica Redicott.
That's right, tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.